Thank you so much, Dr. Carolyn Williams, for coming on Wellness Your Way. I'm thrilled to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here.
We were just chatting before we started recording, and I said to Carolyn that her book is the book I wish I had written. I truly mean that. This is her book, which we'll talk about at the end, is full of so much wonderful information, written in such a usable way and really delicious recipes. So I just know that's a great sign for our interview today. We're going to share so much great information with the audience.
Oh, that's such a compliment.
Yes. Well, I was
Thank
thrilled
you.
to get to preview it. Can you tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, so I am a registered dietitian and I am also a college professor. I teach culinary arts and nutrition, but kind of my primary, or what's evolved to be my primary job, is I write for a lot of media outlets, Cooking Light and Eating Well, and real simple, all recipes, some of those. And I've kind of found a niche over the past 5 to 6 years with them where people trust me to break down really complicated things because they know I'll put it in simple terms and just give them exactly what they need for when they go to the grocery or when they're cooking dinner that night. I realized I do a deep dive into the research and then I kind of come up for air and I think, okay, what would my next door neighbor want to know about this topic? What are the three little things that I would tell her to do? Or so that's kind of the niche I've built in communications, and I really love kind of breaking down the science.
Oh, I love that. You're speaking our language here on Wellness Your Way because my audience will know I love the science. I'll read through every study. I'll do this all day. And I know that not everyone is like you and I. And
Oh,
once
we need to exchange numbers.
yes,
We can be nerds
exactly.
together.
So we're making it as simple as possible for the audience, and I know they appreciate that. It sounds really fun. Like you have a great mix of being a professor and a registered dietitian and an author of many different publications, including your own books. That's a great mix. How do you balance it all? Or is that
Oh,
a myth?
good question. Good question. Well, I have to be completely honest. I did have to kind of realize earlier this year that, you know, I had to get my stress under control just from an inflammation purpose. I
Yeah.
can maybe eating great, being active, but I think it was just the anticipation of new schools coming up for my kids and book launch and just, oh my
Yes.
gosh. And so I had to kind of have a little time out with myself, like, okay, I gotta get this in check. So we've had a summer of resting or trying to rest.
Great.
I like to be busy and just regrouping and focusing, but it's not easy. And balancing it just like everyone else. And kind of
Yes.
have to take inventory, of all the different aspects
Yes.
of my health.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I definitely have fallen into that trap before where, like you said, I was eating really well. I don't believe anyone eats the perfect diet, but I was eating
No.
a very low inflammation style diet, and yet my body was still inflamed. And me being a nutrition focused person, I always think of that as the primary intervention, but sometimes the stress, the over exercise, even the pollution, the toxins, all the other things that contribute to inflammation can be just as or more impactful.
Yes. Yes. Again.
So I would love to talk about your journey with inflammation personally. You just mentioned it a little bit, how you're resetting for this summer. And you're teaching people in your work how to heal themselves from the inside out. Can you tell us either about how you teach people to reduce inflammation and or about how you are doing it with yourself?
Okay. Yeah. And I have to tell you, inflammation was not even on my radar probably 6 or 7 years ago.
Uh-huh.
I mean, if you told me I was going to write 2 cookbooks on anti-inflammatory eating, I would have said, no way. And that was before inflammation was kind of a buzzword. So then I
Mm.
probably would have said, that'll never sell.
Aha. Well,
um, but
good news.
Yeah, so just to give you a little background of how I ended up in inflammation and working in it, I wrote an article for Cooking Light on Alzheimer's in 2017. And just like I said, I have to do a deep dive into the science, and I just really want to know my information. And that kind of helps me, later when it's on social media and people, kind of trolls or commenting or
Yeah.
something. I feel confident in my knowledge, and it
Yes.
just rolls off your back.
Yes.
So I did a deep dive because Alzheimer's was not something we talked about in my nutrition undergrad classes. We didn't even cover brain health. Like, it may show how
Wow.
old I am, but
Oh,
so it was really new to me, and it was fascinating to see because you can see some really direct connections between food and diet
mhm.
and Alzheimer's and the development. But one thing that plays a big role in the development of the disease is inflammation. Inflammation kind of fuels the progression. And so that article, actually, I did not know, but it ended up being nominated for a James Beard Award and won. And I
Amazing.
wish I could say it was inflammation from their own out, but no, I kept working, get my to-do list each day like we all do, and writing articles on all sorts of different nutrition related topics that I thought were very different in themselves. So heart health, autoimmune conditions, intermittent fasting, weight loss, always, all different health topics that seem very different to me. So fast forward a few months later, when I finally made myself sit down and take a vacation, I was kind of thinking about what I wrote and kind of what I wanted to write or look into. And all of a sudden, it was really like a light bulb moment when I was sitting on the beach, and I realized, oh my gosh, all these topics that I've written on that I've been thinking of as so different from one another. If I think back in the research when I was going through the research for each of them, there is one common thread that is in all the research, and that is low grade chronic inflammation. And it was really that light bulb moment. I thought, oh my gosh. And then I thought, well, I must not be understanding this right, because why isn't everybody talking about reducing inflammation?
Yeah.
And then my second thought was, oh my gosh, this would be great for me to eat this way, my parents eat this way, but what if I could get my kids to start eating this way? I couldn't imagine what changes that might have on their long-term health. So then that kind of became my mission. And that's how my first cookbook came about, because I got really overwhelmed. I was like, okay, I know food, I know how to cook, I know nutrition. How do I actually implement this and have it be foods my kids will eat and like? And so it kind of became a challenge for me. And that's where my first Meals That Heal cookbook came about. But interestingly enough, how life kind of comes full circle. When I sent that manuscript off, my daughter, in that interim time before it was out, got diagnosed with an autoimmune condition, which, as you know, is high. That's probably the easiest place to see, the effect of food when it comes to inflation. So it was like, oh my goodness, there's a bigger reason I'm doing this. So that she definitely needed that type of diet then, even though I'd already been interested in implementing it. And and I've noticed it more. I start to realize, and I think my friends probably get tired of me, because everything has a connection to inflammation. Everything does. And I don't know if people realize that it's not just your big chronic diseases, but weight gain, or maybe not being able to lose weight, joint pain, which a lot of people know, or new digestive issues that maybe aren't bad enough to go to the doctor, but aren't your norm. Elevated blood pressure, elevated lipids. All of those are signs of inflammation, kind of little red flags that your body is waving to say, hey. And we're kind of on a continuum of inflammation in our body. Like, every adult is going to have some low grade chronic inflammation. The key is to keep it at that low end and manage it. That kind of became my mission as I've seen over the past year, my inflammation, because of stress, was getting higher. So I had to, push it back, but it's, now that I'm immersed in inflammation, I'm just, oh my gosh, it's everywhere, and that's my solution.
Absolutely. Yes, I am chuckling but not chuckling because we share the similar idea, or not even idea, but grounded in science, that this is the root of so many things. When I run a group called the Revitalized Health Accelerator, we have these calls every single week, and people will ask about, okay, what do I do for joint pain? What do I do for like a little bit of funky digestion? What do I do for my son's eczema? What do I do for whatever? And I start every single thing with, this is inflammatory related, right? We've got to work on reducing the systemic inflammation because the impact so many variety of conditions, symptoms, brain fog, energy, all of this kind of stuff. It's really powerful. I'm glad you dialed into that and are sharing this great information.
Yeah. And I think I kind of tell people to look at maybe a little low grade inflammation. It's like a little contained fire in your body.
Yeah.
And if something irritates that fire or causes it to spread and make another little fire,
yes.
That's how things progress from maybe, little elevated blood pressure to weight gain to type 2 diabetes. And I don't know if people necessarily realize that. And unless you make a point to put out some of those fires, some of that inflammation, it usually just stays there and sticks around.
That's right. And I love the analogy because it's maybe a little bit of a hassle to put out a small fire, but not that bad. And we can all do that if we implement these lifestyle interventions early enough. It's not that bad to reduce the inflammation in our body to a manageable load. But once we let those fires burn out of control and spread to other fires, then it gets really tough. It's easier to take action on a slightly high A1C now than it is when it turns into full-blown diabetes type 2, something like that.
Yeah, it's hard to recognize though, because a lot of times it starts even before like a hemoglobin A1C or stuff. It starts as just little things that aren't quite your norm, but they are never anything you'd go to the doctor about.
Yeah.
So we tend to just keep going with our routine and it'll sort itself out. If it doesn't get better, I'll go to the doctor in 2 weeks.
Yes. So you've mentioned several of those. I always think of like fatigue and brain fog as one, maybe puffiness, like feeling hands or faces puffy, just feeling kind of like heavy overall, and then maybe some digestive discomfort as some of the top things that I see as signs of sneaky inflammation. Are there any others that you would throw in there?
One of the key things, or one of the ones I often see, is new sensitivities to food.
Yeah.
Or to maybe beauty products.
Yeah. Interesting.
That's a big one. Headaches, inability to lose weight is one that you see. Heartburn can be one. It's just, it's those little things where your body isn't quite working like it should, or like it usually does.
Yes, absolutely. And now we've both said that this is multifactorial. Unfortunately for all of us, well, maybe fortunate for us because it keeps us excited and diving into the research, but there's not one thing. It's not like, oh, the only thing that causes inflammation is high fructose corn syrup. So let's just get rid of that and it's easy. There are so many things. And this is a very tough question, but if you could name a handful, 2, 3, 4 of some of the most common triggers, what would those be?
Oh, goodness. Your highly processed foods, all those things that aren't necessarily found in nature. Those are primarily because those are going to affect your gut health, and those good gut microbes are kind of like you're lining your shield so that the chemicals and junk can't get in your body. So when that lining is disrupted, those microbes get disrupted, more of the chemicals and irritants can get in your body, allowing for more inflammation. So, it doesn't have to be, I certainly use some minimally processed foods. So I like those shortcuts, but you definitely have to look for the healthier ones. But the ones especially where there's the colorings aren't found in nature
Right.
and, just additives and preservatives. And then, anything in excess. And I know people kind of hate that when dietitians say eat in moderation, but, a little alcohol appears to have a slight anti-inflammatory
Yeah.
effect. You go past that, you lose that anti-inflammatory effect and you create inflammation.
Yes.
Same for sodium, same for added sugar. I use a little added sugar in my homemade salad dressings. You need, maybe in the form of honey or brown sugar or something, but you need that slight sweet to balance the acidic flavors. To me, that's a healthy way to use added sugar.
Yes.
But the added sugar amounts that we're consuming today are in excess.
That's what I was going to say. It's the dose too. When I made your recipes, which we'll talk about too, I put a tablespoon of honey in the recipe. I think it made 4 servings. I have zero problem with that. And if we're getting, 6 tablespoons of sugar in our giant big gulp soda, and then we're getting another couple of teaspoons in our energy bar, and then this, and it goes on and on and on and on through the day, then it becomes a little less innocuous.
Exactly. So, any of those things in excess. One of the big ones though, another big one is processed meats, cured and processed meats. That's one that there's some of the most convincing evidence in regard to causing cancer, causing diseases and inflammation.
Yes. And here we're talking like bologna and salami and all of that kind of stuff. And I would say, I would love to hear your thought that this is somewhat of a spectrum too. So if you're going to get the Applegate organic sliced turkey, is that a processed meat? Yes, but it's still better than, the hot dog that's been in the package for 2 years or something like that.
Yeah. There's a continuum as well, So bacon, hot dogs, those kind of things. I'm from the South. I'm not going to give up bacon for the rest of my life, but I do think twice. And I do, if I'm going to make it in my home for something, I'm probably going to get like the Applegate or one of the uncured. They're not harm free, but I feel like they're on the safer end of the spectrum.
Yes. Agreed. Great. Okay. So processed foods and processed meats. Is there a third, or does that comprise the bulk of them?
I could go all day on this.
Well, you said stress, so maybe talk a little bit about how stress contributes to inflammation.
I think stress and sleep are so key. And honestly, sleep is what I think everybody needs to prioritize first, because if you don't get a good night's sleep, then I know my food choices aren't the best the next day. My activity or exercise is impacted.
Yes.
My ability to manage stress is impacted. So I really feel like everything starts with sleep. And I think we sometimes feel like sleep is a luxury or indulgent, like if we get 8 hours or something. But, most adults need 7 to 8 hours, and it needs to be good quality sleep.
Yes.
In there. And it's, that's the time that your body rests and repairs itself and rebuilds for the next day. And you really need that. So sleep is huge. Stress. Yes. Stress is huge as well.
Let's see, it's probably been 12 years ago or so, but I prided myself on getting through with, 4 hours of sleep. Like, I don't need much sleep, all of this kind of stuff. And looking back, I can tell how, even though from the outside, I didn't really look any different, and I was eating healthy food and I was exercising and all that kind of stuff. So that's part of it. But my health was just nowhere near where it is now. And the way I felt day to day, like, yes, I wasn't falling asleep in the middle of the day, but I did not have the natural energy. I think you're so right that when we consider it an indulgence, we're missing the mark.
Yeah. And, it's not the same, catching up on the weekend doesn't really make up for the good quality during the week.
Absolutely not. Although I will say, hey, if you have the opportunity to get a little bit of extra sleep on a weekend, good for you, but you can't catch up. And there's a detriment of really altering your rhythm as well, and going to bed 4 hours later on the weekend and sleeping in 4 hours later.
Yes.
So Yes,
Yeah.
I love the focus on sleep. Thank you for that. Let's talk about cooking because this
Okay.
is one of your favorite topics, I know. And I do food prep every single week.
Mhm.
I really believe that for my lifestyle, it is so helpful and even essential. It saves
Mhm.
me a lot of stress. It saves me a lot of times where I might have drove through who knows where, and saves me money as well, saves me time. So I'm fully on board, but it's not always my favorite time, to be honest. And it doesn't seem very appealing to a lot of people. If they haven't cooked at all, they're like, ooh, getting in the kitchen and getting 18 ingredients that I'll never use again. And then I'm making this meal for 3 hours that I might not even like. So, how do you encourage people who are newer to this cooking journey to get started?
I am good. I am big on prepping, but not necessarily cooking to prep. And you're never
Yeah.
going to find me in the kitchen for 3 hours, like on a Sunday afternoon, prepping for the week.
Yes.
But I definitely, and I think I share this in my new book that's coming out, Cookbook. I'm not one. Meal prepping for me, or like the kind where you see where you make, you see the pictures on Instagram of like
Yeah.
8 of the same meals. I don't want everything, or I don't want the same meal all week. So
Yeah.
I've kind of strayed. I don't necessarily do that kind of meal prep, but I do buy essentials that I know I'm going to use. Even if I'm not sure what my meals are, there are certain things that I know I can walk in the grocery and say, okay, I need this, to have stuff that I can throw a meal together with. If I
Love
have
it.
done a little more prep, then I am going to go ahead and, prep a protein, maybe grill a bunch of chicken or cook a big batch of brown rice. I can put some in the fridge, some in the freezer, and then I have got a whole grain to pull together as a side dish or as a grain bowl, or, however. So I do more prep like that, kind of component prepping that I can use various ways during the week.
I love that. I think that's much more accessible for most people than prepping 21 meals a week, especially if they have families or things like that. So, um, I think there's a great to call out in your book. There's a great chart that has plus signs. I'm visualizing it in my mind. It has like brown rice plus chicken plus zucchini or whatever, and
Mhm.
here's your meal. And I love that, just helping people put together those components in various ways until they're able to get their hands on your book. Are there any tips that you have for like minimal cooking prep
Yeah.
options like that?
Honestly, some of my best meals are when I'm forced to just use what's in my fridge and
Yes.
cabinets. And it'll be so good, and I'll be like, I wish I'd written this down, But I try to always have leafy greens on hand. I try to always keep some kind of protein. Maybe it's salmon or tuna in the cabinet. Maybe it's some grilled chicken, or frozen shrimp in the freezer that you can cook really quick. And then I try to have some kind of whole grain. It may be the ready to eat, or it may be when I've cooked. And then my neighbor jokes that I have the most condiments ever. I have a plethora of dressings and sauces and condiments, because really a bowl meal is what I will almost always go for. Greens and warm a grain, add some protein. I may add dried fruit or some nuts, and drizzle it with a dressing or a little chimichurri sauce or something. Nothing that I've really planned, but when push came to shove and I actually looked at, okay, I've got these roasted vegetables, I've got this cooked quinoa, I've got, let's throw them all together.
Yes.
I love a bowl meal. You can't mess it up. If get a protein veggie, get a good sauce or dressing.
I completely agree. I call it fridge foraging, like make
Yes.
use of what you have there. And I encourage people to do it. And I find they tend to be scared. It's like, well, what if I don't like it? My personal opinion, which I know is not popular, but I'll just eat it anyway, even if it's not like the best meal. And I kind of think if it's like a Tuesday night dinner or whatever, why don't we just eat it if it's nourishing for our bodies and it's full of components that we like? But I understand people's hesitation. And I think part of the way we get better at knowing what we'll like is just trying it. So do
Yeah.
you agree? Just get in there, try it, see what
Yes.
you
I
can
mean,
do.
that's really how you get to know food and really get to know flavors in cooking.
Yeah,
If you've got components, you've got things in your kitchen that you're pulling together. Well, you like all those different components, evidently,
right.
and so you're pulling them together. So usually you just need some kind of sauce or maybe a little feta cheese or something to kind of bring the flavors together, and that's just experimentation. Sometimes
Yes,
I'll mix stuff together and I'm like, oh, I'd like a little more flavor, and I think, okay, what do I have? Does it need a
love
squeeze
it.
of lemon juice? But that's really, and I guarantee it's gonna be good. It may not be as good as you hope, but they're all foods in your kitchen that you like, that you have. It's gonna be good, and that's
Yes,
really how you learn how to create your next bowl meal. How to pull your next one
absolutely.
together.
Love it. So I think prime option is always to make our own sauces. And in the two recipes that I've made from your book, which are the peanut sauce over chicken and broccoli slaw and the beef bulgogi, those sauces were both like out of this world, but also simple. I didn't have to buy
Yeah.
any ingredients that I
Oh,
didn't already
good.
have. It was like soy sauce and honey and like fish sauce, maybe. I can't remember what else was in there, garlic, but they were great. But I'm going to ask you a hard question. You
Okay.
might not want to answer, and if you don't, that's okay. Are there any pre-made condiments that you love?
Oh, yes. The majority of what's in my fridge is pre-made. And we're
Oh,
so lucky right now that we have finally some brands that are using good quality ingredients.
yes.
Most of my salad dress, I make my own salad dressing, when I'm having company over or every now and then. But on weeknights, I'm using a bottled dressing. But I love the Tessie Mae's brand. I'm
Yes.
choosing ones that have the extra virgin olive oil, I tell people my trick for buying healthier processed foods or store-bought items is I look at the ingredient list, and I want to see, like, if I were to be making a similar dressing at home, I want to see that what's in the ingredient list is pretty much the same thing as what would be in that recipe.
Yes.
I want to see olive oil, I want to see vinegar, I want to see lemon juice. It's okay if there's a touch of sugar and it's at the end. You need that to balance the flavors.
Right.
But I want to see, the same ingredients if I was making it at home. And same goes for like a tomato sauce or a
Yes.
marinara. They vary greatly, but if I'm going to buy a store-bought one, then I want to see like organic tomatoes. I want to see extra virgin olive oil, basil, onions, those kind of
Yes.
things.
Oh, I love it. I love Tessemae's too. The lemon garlic or something like that is one of my
Yes.
favorites. But I wish they did use olive oil. They use sunflower oil, which isn't my
They use
favorite.
sunflower oil. There are a few. It's harder to find ones with olive oil. Sometimes you can find olive
Avocado
oil and
oil.
avocado,
Like
or yeah,
Primal
or
Kitchen,
blend.
Chosen Foods has some as well. But I agree. I wish it were easier to find the olive oil, but
Yeah,
it's still possible.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, great. I have one more question for you. Then I'd love to talk about your book and anything that you want to share about the book, which I highly recommend. If you could prioritize 5 or 6 foods that are anti-inflammatory and rich in nutrients and you love personally, they don't have to be like
Mhm.
the healthiest foods ever, but your favorite 5 to 6 foods that are anti-inflammatory, what would those be?
Okay. Um, well, when I was doing all my research, there were kind of three groups of food that just immediately rose to the top. And these three types of food or classes of food got to be kind of obnoxious in the research. Like I was like, oh my gosh, give me something new.
Can I guess?
Yes,
Leafy greens, berries, and omega-3s.
close. Leafy
Okay, tell me.
greens, berries, and cruciferous vegetables.
Oh, okay, even better. I love that
So, but
answer.
but the omega 3s are right in there.
Okay,
So
great.
or right behind there. But yeah, so I mean, we're lucky right now. It's summer and berries are in their prime.
Mhm.
I am loving raspberries right now. I will just sit at my desk and eat them for Greek yogurt.
Yum.
I love those. I love cherries. Another berry that people tend to not know about is wild blueberries, and they're going to be found frozen.
Yes.
And they are smaller, and they sound like the ones that would be like in your grandmother's backyard or something. They're not. They're a specific type that are grown in Maine, and they're frozen. And there's a lot of research on them that they are even more powerful. The antioxidants and the phytochemicals are even more concentrated in those wild blueberries than in other berries. And that's one you keep in the freezer. So, doesn't go bad. I love that aspect.
Yes.
I love roasted broccoli.
Me too.
And luckily my kids do too. In fact, I told someone earlier, I started, if we're having it for dinner, I will sometimes make that first and then just sit it out once it's done. And usually there's not much broccoli left by dinner, which I'm fine with because it's broccoli and everybody's snacking on broccoli. But if you haven't tried vegetables roasted, I would say everyone needs to give broccoli another try. If you're not, I roast my green beans. Roasting, I feel like, is a game changer for people who don't like, think they don't like vegetables.
Absolutely agree. I have an air fryer, but I like roasted even better personally. I think roasted is so delicious. So
and
roasted broccoli.
It's easy. Sometimes when I don't want to cook dinner, I'm like, Carolyn, all you do is throw them on a sheet pan.
Yes.
Olive oil. You can do that.
Yes.
I would say one thing that is always in my cart every week is baby spinach. And I like that leafy green because I can use it both raw or cold in a salad or a smoothie, but I can also use it. I can stir it into sauces or saucy dishes. Sometimes I'll even, like if I have a saucy like chicken skillet or something that maybe I'm serving the kids over rice. Well, sometimes I'll do a bed of, baby spinach, and I'll serve the chicken and sauce over that, and it wilts and it's wonderful.
Yes.
So I like it also helps leafy greens not go bad when you can use them in a variety of ways like that. So,
those are wonderful.
So let me see. I am a huge kombucha fan, and I'll probably preface this by saying I struggled for the longest time trying to find a kombucha that I liked. And I was like, I know I need to drink this, but I just don't like it. I will tell people, keep trying. They all taste different. There are some that are not as acidic or vinegary. And I really love at 5 o'clock now, to kind of make a kombucha mocktail. I'll get some crushed ice and kombucha. And then, I'll add a splash of either 100% cranberry or 100% pomegranate juice or cherry juice, just to kind of add a little more flavor and tone down the kombucha a little. And but I almost would prefer that over a glass of wine at 5 o'clock, which
I'm a big proponent of kombucha in a wine glass. Just putting it in the wine glass makes it feel more indulgent and like a treat, and it has that little bit of tang. I think it's a great option.
Yes. So I'm huge on kombucha. Let's see, that's 4. I am huge on vitamin D and omega-3. I know we're jumping from foods to nutrients, but vitamin D and omega-3, and those are going to be found in your fatty fish, although most people still need a vitamin D supplement. But a lot of people don't, they realized during COVID how tied into your immune system vitamin D is. And we just don't get enough. But the omega-3s and vitamin D are in your fatty fish. So getting plenty of those in.
Oh my goodness. I would love to eat with you anytime. We would have a broccoli and spinach and raspberry and fish and all kinds of wonderful.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
Yes, it sounds right up my alley. And all the meals, I mean, I am not usually this much of a fangirl, but I truly mean it. Your book has 100 recipes, and I could have made any of those 100 and enjoyed them. So listeners, I'm really serious about this. I don't recommend very many cookbooks because I think most people could just figure it out by fridge foraging, but this one is awesome. It's called Meals That Heal, One Pot, 100 plus recipes for your stovetop, sheet pan, Instant Pot, and air fryer. Reduce inflammation for the whole body health. Can you tell us any more about the book and where listeners can get it?
Yes, it's coming out September 27th, but you can go
Great.
ahead and pre-order now. You can pre-order at any of your major booksellers, Barnes and Noble, any of your big box stores. You can
Great.
also pre-order on Amazon.
Great.
The book will be in stores September 27th, and again, all your major bookstores. I think
Excellent.
if you pre-order though, I think you might get it a few days early, maybe
Oh,
even a week
great.
early. So that's a little incentive there, but I'm really excited. And I don't know if we didn't really talk about this, but I really got, I think during COVID and working from home, I got where I wasn't dying to cook dinner every night, but I
Hmm.
wanted a healthy dinner, and I'm a foodie, so I wanted something really good and something my kids will eat. So that is really kind of where the one pot, like, okay, Carolyn, how do you do this even, more simple than, so that's really where the one pot concept came from. So I'm really excited. And, when I tell people I'm not dying to cook dinner a lot of nights too, they really connect. I think it's kind of freeing to admit it. Sometimes we feel like we're supposed to get in there and be excited, but that's not going to happen every night.
I completely agree. And we can get more excited if we're looking forward to the recipe and we know it's just one pot and we know it'll nourish us. But sometimes it is a little bit of elbow grease and a little bit of convincing yourself you'll feel better after. I think just looking through this book, though, also with gorgeous pictures, I think it will motivate people to want to cook even more.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad you like it.
I do. It's one that I will keep around. Many more recipes to come from me. And I really appreciate you being here. You shared a wealth of information on inflammation. We will include the link to pre-order the book. We're actually recording it a little early, but this will come out in September. So it's now only a
Oh,
couple of
great.
weeks until you can get that book in your hands, and we'll include any other links as well. So you can contact Dr. Carolyn Williams. And I really appreciate you being here one more time. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.